question. Do you think that literature shapes our relationships, or do you think that our relationships shape literature?
Ooh.
It's a very tough question. It's actually both. I hate to split it down the middle, but when you pick up a work of literature, the relationships that you see in there basically kind of help to formulate our worldview. And likewise, our worldview, if you are a writer, ends up shaping what eventually comes out in literature, whether it be in a author's conscious or subconscious as they're writing. Sometimes authors write stuff and it's only later that they realize that there was some sort of undercurrent that maybe they didn't really intend that made it into their work. So it's a little bit of both, depending if you're the reader or eventually the writer with it. But it does inform, it does shape, and literature is the imaginary rehearsal for the real world. So we learned that in 9th grade. But as we read literature, we're able to then compare that to our current relationships and see what's working, what's not working, what don't we like about the relationship in the novel versus our current relationships, and vice versa as you are writing. So I think it's both. It's kind of split down the middle there a little bit, but it depends on your framework, whether you are just purely a reader or if you're also trying to write.
Wow. Cool. Okay, last question. This is about the Kite Runner. So a friendship in the Kite Runner, the main one is between Amir and Hassan, who are these two boys.
Okay.
And Amir has kind of always taken advantage of Hassan in this relationship and saw him get raped, never did anything about it, never really was a great friend by the reader's point of view. But Hassan kept continuing to kind of chase him and gave him that unconditional love no matter what, and never really gave up on Amir. So do you think that that's healthy, that's a good relationship, that shows that Hassan is a good friend and being strong and creating that loyalty, or do you think that that's unhealthy and Hassan should have just given up knowing that Amir wasn't the greatest of friends?
Again, I'm going to straddle the line on this one. It's a little bit of both.
Always drawing the line.
I know,
So
always drawing the line.
abstract.
But here's the thing, initially, yeah, it's nice to have loyalty. It's nice to, sort of say, all right, you know what, I'm going to be the bigger person and, continue to try to make this relationship work. However, there does come a point in time when you're being taken advantage of, and when, you can look at the situation and go, this is not healthy. So I think initially, but there comes a point in time where an individual has to stand up on their own 2 feet and say, you know what, this is not beneficial to me anymore and I need to move on. Otherwise, you're just going to be a carpet for everyone else to kind of walk on.
So do you think that knowing that, like when you read that in the Kite Runner and you learn those lessons that you just spoke about, do you think that would help you in the future if you ever find yourself in that kind of a relationship?
Sure, I've been in that type of relationship, and you gotta know when to say when, and when you're putting out too much and not getting anything in return, because it's a two-way street. As you go forward, and that's friendships, that's relationships, that's with your parents, your brothers and sisters, the whole nine yards. You can learn from literature and apply it to your own life. And that's the one thing that I tried to instill in my 9th graders going forward, is that
You did.
There's lessons that you can learn from it, and sit there and going, you know what, this is kind of like this book I used to read back in the day. So
Thanks,
anyway.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you so much
for
for your
that.
time.
Okay, hi Emily. First of all, in literature, do you think that happy endings, although they are rare, they do happen, such as in the love story in the book The Importance of Being Earnest, where everyone ends up with who they are, do you think that these happy endings are simply sugar-coated versions of real life, or do you think that they're trying to teach readers how these happy endings can be achieved in the future?
I think it depends on the genre of the book. I think with a lot of children's books, they have a lot of happy endings just to make it a easy read for their children. But when it comes to more adult reading, I believe that they create happy endings in order to kind of prove a point or send a message as to what creates this happy ending, whether it's hard work or overcoming an obstacle or something. So I think it kind of depends on the genre.
That's cool. Next question. Do you remember a time in your life when a lesson from literature influenced a decision that you made either consciously or subconsciously?
So there's a book called Walk Two Moons, and the message of the book is basically that you can't judge somebody until you've walked 2 moons in their shoes, and it's an old Native American saying, and I think that I still try to think about that when I meet new people, and I'm not
That's
really
cute.
quite sure of their situation.
That's nice. Okay, so for the last question, do you find that you connect with any characters in any book that are either friends or a family or a relationship? And if you do connect to these people, do you think it's because when you read it, you started to act a little bit more like them, so you became more like them?
So when I think of a character I can connect with, I immediately think of Ron Weasley. We both come from the red. No, I'm kidding. No, I really think when I watched The Hunger Games the first time, I really saw myself as Katniss. I would volunteer for my sister, just as Katniss did for Everplant or whatever. Prim. Right. So I think I would do the same for my sister, and she's very family oriented just like I am, and she's very hardworking and courageous, and I'd like to think that I would do the same in that
So
situation.
you think that the author wrote that sort of relationship between the sisters because he's witnessed it, or he wrote that and that's why sisters are like that? Like, what do you think came first?
Well, the author is a female, so I think that this author either had a sister that she was close with or witnessed very...
So from past experiences.
Right.
So her experiences shaped the literature. Okay, I love you, bye. Hi, Mikey. So we just have a couple questions to ask you. So talking about some good friends, what do you think makes a good friend?
What makes a good friend? I would say a good friend is someone that is honest to you, because sometimes you need the truth.
I agree. Do you think that in literature you've seen those kind of relationships, and do you think that that helps people in the future become a better friend?
Sure. For example, in F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby, Nick Carraway is a good friend to Jay Gatsby because Gatsby deceived him, but even then he still remained a good friend,
Right.
and told him the truth.
And that's helped you when you earn your friendships.
Yeah,
because
I've
you remember
definitely
that.
I thought of Nick and Jay when I've been thinking about my friendships.
Okay, and then just a couple more questions concerning love relationships.
Oh.
So in
I thought this was supposed to be a fluff piece.
in A Farewell to Arms by Hemingway, he has a very depressing ending for the two lovers. So, and this is also a common theme throughout a lot of famous and classic literature is tragic endings like Romeo and Juliet. So do you believe that that is written in order to teach people how to avoid these tragic endings, or do you think that it's just a realistic sort of ending that most relationships succumb to? What do you believe?
I think both of those could be interpreted as the correct way. One is obviously a little more pessimistic than the other, but I think also the usage of a tragic ending between two lovers enhances the story or the novel as it ends badly. But
So you think it's just for entertainment? It's not exactly truth to what the real
I don't think
world
it's
is like.
I don't think it's true to what the real world is
But
like.
you do think it could help you in the future.
It certainly could.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, Michael Moratori. We appreciate all that you have done.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is Miss McQuaid. She's an amazing teacher of special ed students at Woodson High School. What do you think is the most important, or one of the most important, friendship lessons that you've learned from any sort of literature?
Well, I definitely think The Giving Tree is one of the very powerful relationship aspect from literature. Like, I remember growing up and, the tree just kept giving and
Right.
the boy kept taking, and then the tree was gone. And
Right.
that really is, you want to find people who give and take equally.
Right.
And maybe sometimes, some years, that person might need more from you, but you need to make sure that they're giving you what you need.
So
also.
you believe that a lot of literature, even children's books,
Yes,
can
they're-
carry on with you in the
Oh,
future
yeah,
and know how to
absolutely.
deal with friendships.
Frog and Toad was
Oh,
also
good one.
another one that
Frog and Toad.
my friend from childhood, we'll still call each other Frog and Toad because that's a relationship and a friendship that we saw in those books.
That's cute. That's perfect.
That's
Okay,
awesome.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Miss Field.
Hi.
Okay, so first question. Can you think of any love relationships, friendships, or familial relationships in literature that model what the perfect sort of relationship would be like?
Okay. Not many, honestly. I think good literature really talks about issues that we have as humans, and most of those issues are negative. So I I think if a piece of literature is really worth its weight, then it's probably going to discuss something that's controversial. So a lot of those are not going to be positive. But if you ask me to consider one positive one, I would have to say I really enjoy the relationships in To Kill a Mockingbird. I really think about Scout and Jim, and I think about their father, and I really believe that that novel was written about the author's desire to connect to her father and her brother, and how Harper Lee in her own life at the time desired to make sense of all the chaos and the racial tension that was around her. I also love Atticus and his figure as the father and her doting over him. And if you look at her biography, it really shows her desire to express how much she loved her dad.
That's cute.
I like that.
Perfect. Okay, so the next question.
Okay.
Have you ever acted in a certain way in any sort of relationship based on a lesson that you learned from a piece of literature?
Absolutely. So, I think there are so many lessons to be learned from literature. And when I was growing up and in high school, my favorite was British literature. One of my favorite all-time novels is Pride and Prejudice. And I have learned so much about how not to be cocky or to be cocky or not to have too much pride in a relationship. But I also think that there are some extreme examples too. For example, in Wuthering Heights, the obsessive type of love relationships that go nowhere and are very detrimental to self and to others. These are things that I grew up reading, and I mean, they totally modeled for me the kind of person I wanted to be in a dating situation. I would refer back to Lizzie and say I want to be strong like her. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I'm an English teacher, so that's kind of what I get into. But for me, those are the types of role models that I had, and I think they definitely shaped my life.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
The Great Gatsby. Walk Two Moons.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
The Kite Runner.
The End of the Affair.
Pride and Prejudice.
The Importance of Being Earnest.
Wuthering Heights.
When speaking with Mrs. Field, we discovered that in order to come to a conclusion when answering such an abstract question as this one must analyze supporting textual evidence regarding each argument or perspective. After carefully reviewing the evidence, such as quotes from our interviewees, for each contrasting view, the side that has the most support ultimately is proven to be the answer. In order to display our concluding thoughts pertaining to this question, we constructed this chart to reveal that even though all sides had sufficient evidence, the side of literature shapes our relationship obtained the most support, and therefore is our culminating answer. Essentially, this chart shows quotes from interviewees that supported either the side of literature shapes our relationships or the side that our relationship shaped literature. And in addition, the chart also shows the interviewee's ultimate overall opinion. After careful analysis of our interviews as well as many works of literature, our final conclusion is that literature shapes our relationships.